How's it going? This is Black History Month, the shortest month of the year, where the Yankee Empire of the United States trying to acknowledge for once that people of color exist, and they portray MLK as this peace-loving, somewhat capitalist person, even though he was a military revolutionary who promoted socialism, and during the very end of his life, he started to abandon slowly about his pacifist and started to promote more revolutionary action for violence if it is necessary, if all else fails. And then he died. And 1998, the Supreme Court had confirmed they have killed MLK. So, yeah. But in this case, as a second-class citizen, indigenous who lives in a colony, we have our own share of struggle. At the Black History Month, I want to show some Puerto Ricans or Taino, Borincans, Boricua, whatever you want to prefer, who have contributed to the history of African American history and Afro Puerto Rican history. I think one of the first people I think we should mention is Arturo Alfonso Schomburg, who is the father of the Black history, itself. The very concept of Black history and the entire thing of Black museums and stuff like that in the United States was started by a Black Puerto Rican called Arturo Alfonso Schomburg, who technically is like trying to understand the struggle of African Americans and Afro Puerto Ricans, especially during the slavery and stuff like that. It's a very important figure that I highly recommend. I will put links in the description, whatever books or documentaries I can find about certain individuals I'm going to mention, which again, they're very important. We also have another one is Ramon Emeterio Betances, who is considered the father of the Puerto Rican independence movement. That's not really true. Puerto Ricans at the beginning, as far back the indigenous people itself wanted independence from Spanish colony, and we have multiple revolutions. The first revolution, not only in Puerto Rico but in all of the Americas, was at the Taino Revolution of 1511. And there were other revolution for Puerto Rican independence in 1822 by the Freemasons of all people. The 1930s, there were two, but they never actually started. They got caught in 4K, sadly. And then we have Betances, who was the original Che Guevara. He was in the Paris Commune. He was an anarchist as well. He also participated in the 1848 revolution in France. He participated in the war for Cuban independence, actually helped liberate Cuba for independence. He actually overthrew a dictator, Dominican Republic, and established democracy. And people were so impressed they want him to become their president, but he declined. And he convinced the United States not to invade and annex Dominican Republic. And he also started the first revolution for Puerto Rican, quote unquote, even though, like I said, there were like multiple before that. But the Cry of Lares, which again, he was the one man who almost achieved the ultimate goal, which was to unite the Confederacy of the Antilles with the entire Spanish Caribbean, which was Cuba, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, become one nation, like the 13th colony become the United States, like that. And he almost achieved it. He liberated two out of the three islands. He was so close to the third one before he got snitched. Sadly, yeah, that's how it goes sometimes. Sadly, we also have another famous Afro Puerto Rico was Pedro Albizu Campos, another revolutionary who was the leader of the Nationalist Party Puerto Rico, which is the oldest national political party in Puerto Rico currently that still function. Who was a revolutionary trying to bring socialism, although he was a socialist. Well, he was in a liberal sense, but like for him, anti-imperialism and anti-colonial was the priority of all things. And he started the 1950 revolution for Puerto Rican independence, which was the last so far revolution for the freedom of the people of Puerto Rico. Another important figure in the Afro-Puerto Rican history was Wilfred Benitez. Everybody who's a fan of boxing, he is the youngest champion in boxing history. Like people talk about how young Mike Tyson was. Like Wilfred Benitez was like 2 or 3 years younger than Mike Tyson when he became a world champion. Yeah, he currently holds the record as the youngest champion in the history of boxing. And he also won world champions in three separate weight division, and he fought at the four kings of heavyweights during the 80s. We also have Juan More Campos, who was a composer of the indigenous music of Puerto Rico that created in Puerto Rico called danza, and he's the one who took the genre into the mainstream. and it's considered by many people at the time who took the genre and its popularity at the absolute peak, or at the very least his artistic expression took its peak. Although sadly he died in a very young age of 38. We also have Jesus Colon, who was a Puerto Rican poet and writer, who was known for being the father of the intellectual artistic movement known as the Eureka Movement, started in, New York. It was a movement that started heavily in the South Bronx, which was considered the second home for Puerto Ricans. Technically, the entire Bronx is their territory, but the South Bronx is like their main thing. For many people who don't know that. Another important figure, this is more of a local history on the island, is Rafael Queda, who is considered the father of the public education in Puerto Rico. Another important figure that many people don't know is Martissa Corregit, who was not only the first Afro-Puerto Rico to win a U.S. Olympic swimming team, he was the first black U.S. swimmer to set an American and world swimming record. Not just Puerto Rican, but also black American in general. Another important figure, again, this is more local history, now well known outside of Puerto Rico and Latin America, is Rafael Nante, who was a musician, composer, and a poet, who is considered one of the greatest poets in Puerto Rican history, who wrote one of the most important songs in the history of Puerto Rico, written in 1929, called Lamento Poricano, which was during about the beginnings of the Great Depression and the sadness of the Jibar. We also had Rafael Nante, who was the founder of the highly successful group El Gran Campo. Again, anybody outside of Latin America will not know this group. And for anybody who's a boxing fan, we also had Esteban de Jesus, who was the first boxer to defeat Roberto Duran. So, take that, Puranos. Another important figure, but for different reason, for the folklore and the legend surrounding this mysterious movement called Isabel de la Negra, or Isabel the Black, who was a woman from unknown origins who owned a brothel, and she was considered she was the first woman, one of the first women to own such a business, and gained a lot of legend and respect, although a lot of controversy because of the religious environment that she lived in, because Puerto Rico is a very Catholic island, and a black woman who was possibly an escaped slave, owning a brothel was considered a sin. Again, a very influential woman in the history of people of color and women and feminism in Puerto Rico, and again, a very controversial figure among the more conservative environments. Again, another important is a boxer again called Juan Evangelista Venegas, who was the first Puerto Rican to win an Olympic medal representing Puerto Rico. There was also Miss Camacho, who was the first black woman Puerto Rican to win a gold medal in Puerto Rico. She's the second Puerto Rican ever to win a gold medal in the Olympics representing Puerto Rico. The first is a white woman, Puig. There's also another important ones like Carlos Colon, a very influential figure in professional wrestling, and he's one of the founders of hardcore wrestling as we know it. There's also Marco Cioro, who was a slave who started the slave revolt in 1821. It's considered the biggest slave revolt in the history of the island. There's also Neil deGrasse Tyson, one of the more famous astrophysicists. And there's Chacha Jimenez, who is the founder of the Young Lords, a Puerto Rico Maoist group inspired by the Black Panthers and the Chicago Brown Berets. So yeah, there's like many influential people within the Afro-Puerto Rican history, and people often been overlooked. And it should be understandable. Like people should know about this history because this is Black History Month, and the very concept of Black History Month, like as we know, is a thing was started by a Black Puerto Rican. So there's that as well. And many Puerto Ricans, both white Puerto Rican, Black Puerto Rican, indigenous, Tainos, or mixed, had joined the cause, especially for the Black Power movement of the Black Panthers and MLK during his final years at the Poor People's Campaign. And there are some few of them who are either sympathetic of the cause or join Black separatist movements like the Republic of New Africa and their military groups like the Black League and the Black Liberation Army. Like I said, it's one of those things that America will not talk about because it goes against their image of the face of democracy, despite the whole concept of called Interpro suppressed the very notion of a black nation state in the United States, the Republic of Africa, trying to start a shootout inside a church, the Battle of New Haven, and also killing Malcolm X, killing Martin Luther King Jr., killing Frank Hampton, trying to kill many of the people of the Black Liberation Army, and also bombing in Philadelphia, trying to bomb an anarchist primitivist group called Move, and bomb their building, killing all the children in the building. Like I said, there's a group of people who should be remembered for their cause and struggle, and be remembered as a group of people who will help liberate, like all other minorities, of Boricua Taínos, of Chicagos, of New African, and the indigenous Hawaiians, and the many indigenous native tribes and groups throughout the United States who are, by the way, of the 368 treaties with the United States did with the Native Americans, they are classified as independent sovereign foreign nations. So technically speaking, by law, according to the treaties, the very existence of 50 states goes against the law. It's illegal. And in reality, if they put their part and fulfill their duty of the treaty, it should be reduced to like 20 something states. And that's ignoring the Republic of New Africa and Hawaii. So there you go. I hope everybody learn. I gotta put links in the description of the people, if there's books or documentaries about them. I will see you guys next time.